On these last days of Pesach, on Shvi Shel Pesach, the seventh day, which this year coincides with Shabbos Kodesh, we're going to be both reading the Kriyas Yamsuf, the narration of the actual exodus of Klal Yisrael from Mitzrayim into the Midbar on the seventh day, the Shvi'i Shel Pesach, 7 days following the exodus from the actual bowels of Egypt. And we're also going to find ourselves reading the Shir HaShirim, the Megillah of a allegorical love story between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. And the fact is that when there is a Shabbos Chol HaMoed unrelated to Shvi Shel Pesach, that's when we typically lane the Megillah of Shir HaShirim. This year, however, because there is no Shabbos Chol HaMoed, we will Kriyas Yamsuf and Shir HaShirim, and I believe that joined at the hip, particularly given the expression of an understanding of the Beis HaLevi. The Beis HaLevi mentions that by the Kriyas Yamsuf, which is prefaced with the pasuk, Vaya Yisrael Sayil Hadavah Asher Asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim, when Klal Yisrael were able to see the long stretched out hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what he had wrought to the Egyptians, Vayeruha Emes Adonai, then in fact they first were overwhelmed with an endless reverence and awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They aminu b'Adonai v'Moshe Avdo, and they had such a faith and belief in Hashem Yisparach and his trusted servant Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Beis HaLevi, the Zayda, the great-grandfather of the Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal, the first Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, he says, Isa b'Medrash, the Medrash tells us, Ad kan lo hoyu yireim es Hashem, mikan ve'elech hoyu yirei es Hashem, that evidently, as it were, up until this point of time of the Kriyas Yamsuf, the Jews really did not possess a genuine yira, awe and reverence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But given what occurred at the Yamsuf, at that point, they first indeed were able to avail themselves of an appropriate yiras Elokim. And the obvious question is, given all of the osos and amos and all of the signs and all the makos that we spent so much time focused upon during the 2 evenings of the Sidorim that occurred in Egypt, and the terrific punishments heaped upon the Egyptians, did that not generate a tremendous yira, awe, and reverence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, giving way to an understandable belief to follow? What occurred here at this moment of Kriyas Yamsuf that was not present during those weeks in Egypt, which witnessed the entire barrage of the makos heaped upon the Egyptians? And the Beis HaLevi explains that there were 2 types of miracles that the Jews were privy to. They were indeed privy to see the miracles of HaKadosh Baruch Hu hand punishing the Egyptians in the land of Egypt, because indeed they had subjected Klal Yisrael to punishments way beyond that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu sought and had in mind to heap upon the children of Israel. And because of that, they were so punished. And as a result of the punishment of the din placed upon the Egyptians, there indeed was a Yeshua, was a salvation delivered to Klal Yisrael during those weeks of the makos themselves. But in fact, it was only a result of the din, the punishment, heaped upon the Egyptian nation. Whereas when Klal Yisrael had already taken upon themselves the slaughtering of the Paschal lamb and the smearing of the blood upon the doorposts, the mezuzos, and upon the mashkov, and they took upon themselves the damila, circumcising themselves, well, then indeed they had earned the right to experience the geula, explained Chazal. And therefore, says the Beis HaLevi, once they had earned that right and they found themselves at the door, on the cusp of potentially drowning at sea in the Yamsuf, with the advance of the Egyptians to recapture them and drag them back to Egypt, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked down upon the scenario and did not seek to punish the Egyptians and deliver a salvation to Klal Yisrael, but rather, not with a midas hadin, punishing the Egyptians, but with midas harachamim, with indeed the feelings of compassion and mercy for Klal Yisrael, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu change the Bria, change the creation, as it were, of the Bria Sa'olam, going back to that which was created with the event of Shabbos during those first 7 days. And with that midah of rachamim, with that feeling of love and compassion for Klal Yisrael, did he split the sea for them. And only as a result of that rachamim for the children of Israel, with the following of the Egyptians on that dry land to recapture the Israelites, were they punished. So says the Beis HaLevi, indeed, we have this concept of Shnei Chilukim. The b'Mitzrayim yotza Yeshua liyisrael al yedei midas hadin, v'ahayom yotza onish leMitzrayim al yedei midas harachamim. Po rachamim b'din v'din b'rachamim. We have the visitation of punishments upon the Egyptian with din, judgment, resulting in rachamim for a Yeshua for Klal Yisrael. And we have the rachamim given at the Yam Suf, which and I thought to myself, Hashirim is a love song. It's an allegorical love song on the Kadosh Baruch Hu, between this young woman and her lover, the Melech, the king. And we know through reading of the Shir Hashirim that the relationship between Knesset Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu is not a straight level relationship. There are indeed zeniths and troughs. There are indeed high points and low points. There are moments where the two are inseparable, and there are moments of the richok hashchina, of the banishment of the wife, as it were. And as the wife yearns to be reunited with her lover, with Hashem Yisparach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yearns no less to be reunited with Klal Yisrael. And isn't it true, I thought to myself, that in any relationship of love, there are moments indeed where we feel that there are moments of din. There are expectations, fair expectations, but sometimes they're so difficult to live up to. And we require rachamim, mercy and compassion, and the love of mercy for each other, to ignore what would rightfully have been expected, fairly expected, and to move on in the relationship. And sometimes in a genuine relationship, one can feel oneself walking perhaps on dry land, but between two huge walls of water. And it's not an easy path to tread. But that's the relationship between two dodim, between two lovers. And that's the relationship between Hashem Yisparach and Klal Yisrael. Between din and rachamim. But when each is pledged to the other, then there's always a path that can be found between the midos of din and the midah of rachamim. Between the characteristic of judicious decision expected of the other and the midah of rachamim, and the compassion and sympathy and empathy and love for the other. And at the end of the day, that's really what love is all about. And that's what we experience every Nisan, every Pesach, when we turn to Hashem Yisparach, to be redeemed once again, to be reunited with him once again, in a sense, with a sense of freedom, a sense of compassion and love, a sense of sympathy and empathy, a sense of reuniting the pledge of ourselves to Hashem Yisparach, who is always awaiting our return. And indeed, much as Ben Nisan, Nigalo Abasenim in Mitzrayim, much as we were redeemed and taken by Hashem Yisparach as his nation at the time of Pesach, which we celebrate now, so too, once again, Bekarov, speedily in our day, to be reunited with Hashem Yisparach and the entirety of the nation of Israel in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, Yirah Kodesh, B'mheira Amen. A good moed and a wonderful year.